So you're finally ready to get back to the gym after a hiatus of 6, 12 months. Okay, fine. It's been like 2 years. But you're pumped, you're motivated, you're ready to dive in. So you pack your first day back like this: 5 a.m. CrossFit, 6 a.m. yoga, 8 a.m. bar, 9:30 Pilates, 11 a.m. run, and a lunchtime hit session. Does it sound like a good plan? No, of course not. And no fitness coach would recommend that approach. It is too much, too fast, and totally unsustainable. Well, the same logic applies to your marketing. Today, we're talking about why being on every social media platform is not only overwhelming, but it isn't smart strategy. Casting a wide net dilutes your ROI. So, how can you choose the marketing workout that's right for your business? Welcome back to the fitness of business. If you've ever spent hours mindlessly scrolling social media, you've likely found yourself wondering how to cut through the noise and get your business seen. Imposter syndrome in its element. My guest today is Corine Ingrassia, personal brand strategist and content marketing coach. Her company, In Social, supports personal brands by seamlessly blending creative storytelling with data driven strategies. From developing compelling social content to leveraging podcasting as a powerful marketing tool, Corinne has helped dozens of entrepreneurs, like myself, and industry experts build strong, authentic personal brands by crafting content that isn't just seen or heard, but remembered. Every episode kicks off with a listener question in a segment called Hey Coach. So submit your questions. If you had a business coach in your back pocket, what would you ask? And send your questions to Leslie at thefitnessofbusiness.com. So, Corinne, today's Hey Coach is from Lori, and she says,
Hey, coach, do I have to do social media if I own my own business? And how do I know what platform to use? Does it have to be all of them? Also, did I mention I hate social media?
so let's just get right into it. Does every business need to be on social media?
Yes, and I know that sometimes is a jagged pill for entrepreneurs to swallow, especially, like, Lori saying, like, she doesn't like social media. She is not alone. Like, business owners get into this, to do their passion, right? To offer their expertise and their services, right? They're not when they enter into this, they're not thinking that they're going to have to now create content to promote it, right? That's a whole other job in itself,
Yeah,
So
they're not all
sometimes it's good.
influencers.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, and I can't tell you how many times I've had a client start with me and they're like, "Listen, I know I need to be on social media, but I don't wanna be a Kardashian," right? Like, it's not about being a Kardashian, It's really not, like, but every business has to be visible, but they don't have to be viral, and I think that that's kind of where we need to shift the mindset, right? You have to
Mhm.
be visible, but you don't have to be, viral.
So, how would you define visibility in that context?
Visibility is just in that context is really just putting out the content that showcases your expertise in a way that feels, and I know this is like an overused word, authentic and organic, but like that's the only words to really, describe it, is something that feels like you're just talking to your best friend, right? Or
Yeah.
like your best client, and you want to be able to showcase your expertise without worrying so much about the numbers side, right? Because I always tell my clients this too is think of it more of like a calling card, right? When you're building whatever platform you're choosing, this is where people are going to find you, right? Maybe you
Mhm.
started that initial discovery call and now they're doing some more research, right? Someplace they can quickly just go and see your expertise.
Yeah. So, with the overwhelming amount of platforms, kind of like the overwhelming amount of, workouts and types of workouts, like, how do you go about explaining, to your clients how to go about choosing the right one for them?
So it's a mixture of, what feels right to them, but also where their audience is where you want to start. Wherever your
Mhm.
audience is, that's the platform to start with. And for most, I would say it's usually Instagram, which is again a love hate type of a thing because some people have really strong feelings about Instagram.
Yeah.
But I think, take that, take all of your feelings about Instagram out of it, right? And think of it more as just a marketing piece to your business. So usually they'll start with Instagram, and then I honestly tell them to usually dabble in a second one, right? Like don't go crazy. Sometimes you can just cross promote whatever you had on Instagram, but sometimes it's LinkedIn. sometimes it's
Mhm.
Facebook. It really just depends on the entrepreneur and the business.
So then would you say that it's more important to have visibility even if it's maybe not super polished? Is it better to have visibility, period, than just not be on at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think now it's like even easier than it was in prior years, right? Because that whole aesthetic that like for so long, the curated, grids and all of that, that's like thing of a past, right?
Mm,
Like nobody wants that anymore. They want to feel like it's organic and authentic. And the way you show that is not to say you don't want to put anything into the production, of course, but like don't overthink it, right? It doesn't have to have all these fancy transitions and all of that. I think the most important part is your message and the way you're delivering your message, not so much, the bells and the whistles on the production side.
yeah. I remember when I first opened my gym, now this is 2012, and I had one of my, members come up to me, and she was quite a bit younger than I was, and she said, "You need to be on Instagram," and I was like, "What's Instagram?" And so she downloaded it for me on my phone and showed me, and I rolled my eyes and was like, "Oh my gosh, this is just one more thing I have to do." Like, I'm trying to run a business here. Now I have to learn this whole platform and how to create content and make it look good and be interesting. And I guess, like you say, Instagram is maybe the first place to start. Like, what do you think is the first step you would tell people to do if they're opening an Instagram account?
Well, I mean, first you wanna start with your profile, right? That's part of the visibility there, so you wanna make sure you're filling your profile with the keywords that you wanna be found for, and so where it says to put in your name, you can add to that with whatever, for me, it's like, marketing strategy or content marketing. Whatever those keywords are, those are like SEO goals, in
Mhm.
for Instagram. So not to overthink it, but it's a simple thing you can do just when you open up Instagram. You also want to have in your bio quick and easy, like what you do, who you work with, and then make sure, please, please make sure you have a link to your website and
Mhm.
especially or a way to contact you. I can't tell you how many times like I've worked with entrepreneurs or they've reached out to me and then I go to their Instagram and like I have a hard time finding them, because
Mhm.
it's not quick and easy. And I wonder, wow, if I was somebody who wanted to work with them as a client, like, what would I do next? Like, the chances are they may just go to the next person, right? But
Right, right. Yeah.
people want what's quick and easy. And if it's not right there, they're going to move on. So you want to make sure you have your contact information and your website for sure linked up in there. It could be a link tree if you're a link tree
Yeah.
kind of person.
Yeah.
That works as long as the links are right there. They don't want to leave the Instagram platform and search for you on Google.
Yeah.
So, that's where I
Right.
would
It's
start.
like
I would start by, the search terms and
yeah.
thinking about, how you want people to find you.
Yeah, I mean, people's attention spans are very, very short and seemingly only getting shorter. So if they have to go through one extra step to find you, I think that's really good
I
advice.
love those.
Okay, so for Lori, our listener who says, I hate social media, I guess, do you have any advice for ways to get someone to come around? Like maybe there are some fun ways to approach it that don't feel quite so awkward.
Yeah, so I like I said, I've had many clients like Lori that hate
Mhm.
social media. And so, some of the things that we've done is really just to have them focus on telling their business's story or, the tactical tips and not getting too into the nitty-gritty of Instagram. I mean, another option is if it's in your budget, you can hire somebody to actually do the posting and stuff for you, and that alleviates a lot of the stress, for a lot of
Yeah.
entrepreneurs who just really just don't like it. Like, some people just feel like it's a toxic environment or they just, have, like I said, have strong opinions about it, and that's okay. Like, you can hire somebody to actually do the posting where you're literally just, providing the content, maybe offering some freebies or a tip or, just showcasing your expertise and then letting your social media manager handle it. That's one option.
Mhm.
Another thing is to like, don't get caught up in it. Like, just go and post. I'm not saying post and ghost per se. You definitely want to like be interacting, with your audience and stuff. But I think too, as you start to grow your audience, right? Everybody starts somewhere, people that they're following, right? You can start that close friends list. Now Instagram gives you the capability of curating who you see in your feed. So if
Mhm.
that's the issue, is that you just don't want to see like certain things in your feed, they've made it a lot easier to kind of filter all of that out. So I
Yeah.
think to just like stay focused on telling your story. Don't think about it in terms of being a Kardashian or now you have to like consume all this, content that you don't want to. There's ways around it. You can do a filter, you can get somebody to manage it. And then, the other thing is too, what some people, and then they're not wrong, right? Social media has its toxic traits to it.
Mm,
Um, but the other thing, the way you can look at it is you're not like if be the voice you want, you wish to see in your feed, right?
mm,
Create that content that
mhm.
you wish that you saw. Like if you're seeing too much negativity, put more positivity in it. And
Yeah.
and I feel like sometimes clients get something from that too, right? They feel like,
Yeah.
I'm going to make this my own. It's like an ownership thing. And not to say that everybody always loves it, but it makes it a little easier to create content on there when you're looking at it from that lens.
Well, I think that's great advice because I think and maybe this is either a misperception or a dated perception that you have to create this online persona that is different or more polished or more professional or whatever you think it should be in order to show up a certain way on social media when what I think you're saying is like just show yourself and what is important to you and that is like inherently going to resonate with the people that you want to attract to your business.
Yeah, and I think if you get too caught up in, like you said, like the polished delivery, right? Or like being too scripted, people are going to see through that. Like
Mhm.
people will sniff that out in 2 seconds
Yeah.
and you'll lose them, right? So it's
Mhm.
it's not worth it if you're taking the time to make this content, make it sound like you. Like I said, imagine speaking to your best friend or like your best client, right? And pull on that energy. Don't get too caught up in like looking perfect and sounding perfect and hitting every mark. Like make it sound conversational, and then you'll get their engagement.
So I guess that sort of begs the question of maybe again, people think that, I'm gonna post on social media and then that is going to bring me business, and that's going to turn into X number of dollars in revenue or sales or whatever it is, and maybe if they're promoting a product, that may be a more realistic, goal, but I guess how would you approach it from an ROI stance for someone who is just, someone like me who's trying to get the word out about their coaching business, but I don't have a, physical product to sell per se.
Yeah, I mean, social media, like any other kind of marketing, is a long game, and no entrepreneur wants to hear that because, we want results quick, especially if we're investing in somebody to manage our social media or something like that. But I think you have to just accept that it is a long game. It's just like, when you meet somebody, right? It takes some time to build that relationship. The same is true for online relationships. That's the beauty of social media, right? Like you want to
Yeah.
build that relationship where people feel like they know you, right? They already know some of your story. They feel like they know your business and your offerings and they see you as a trusted, leader in the space. And it takes some time to do that. So I always say if they're just hopping on new, if somebody hopping on new, give it, I would say, even like 6 months before you really get caught up in the analytics. If not, like, maybe every 3 months, I would say check, but if you're brand new to it and you're gonna, like, get in your head about, like, the analytics, I would say even, like, 6 months before you can really determine, like, how to tweak your strategy.
Mhm.
But I think too, like, the return on investment isn't a like you said, if especially your service-based. I mean, yes, it could be, like, bookings, consultations, things like that, but I think more so, I always tell my clients to measure it on the engagement, right? Like people who are asking questions. How many more questions are you getting? Interest, right? It
Yeah.
all matters. Some people will say, like, oh, well, I only got 300 views. Like, I made that thing, I only got 300 views. Well, that's 300 people, right? Like, I know
Mhm.
it's almost cliche at this point. Everybody's heard it. But like 300 people in a room, it's like, that's a lot of people.
Mhm.
Where
Yeah.
else are you going to reach 300 people just on a given Tuesday?
Right.
So you gotta again, it's like a mindset shift and not to get
Mhm.
caught up in it. And I know it's hard when like a lot of the people that we're following are not to say the Kardashians, but viral like that, right?
Yeah.
So then that becomes our bar, and then it's like, "Well,
Sure.
why even bother?" Right? But I think that you have to measure it by the relationships that you're building.
Mhm.
That's the bottom
I
line.
think that's great. Going back to the, 300 people, if you didn't post anything, then it would be 0 people who saw your who saw what you do. So I think, that's a really important perspective to maintain. And I definitely don't wanna dive too deeply into, like, the data and the analytics piece, but I wanted to mention that there's an exercise that I do with my clients where I have them basically just, like, brain dump everything they have to do on any given day in order to keep their business going, and then they go through and they highlight what are all the things that they love doing that energize them that they would never wanna outsource because they love doing it so much, and then, on the other end of the spectrum, what are the things that they just absolutely despise doing, it drains them, and, maybe social media or analytics or, some component of this is on that list. I say make that the first place that you outsource. And it doesn't have to be more complicated than that, but maybe that gives people a little peace of mind to know that they don't have to do it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's not something like you said that like lights them up. Like absolutely
Mhm.
outsource and see, where you can get some help and what fits into your budget. Because you don't have to be posting every day, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't have to. So I think that that's an important thing to think about too. You don't need somebody who's going to be posting for you daily. You just need a couple of times a week.
Yeah. So in order to figure out where a particular company or business or person should be posting, what platforms are, most aligned with what they offer, how do you go about figuring out who they're selling to?
Yeah, I mean, and you and I have gone through this, right? Like our audience avatar exercise.
Mhm.
I think that's a great way to start. It also helps, like when you're speaking, right? It gives you somebody to speak to. It makes you more
Mhm.
confident. You know exactly who you're speaking to. And so you start to like almost like build this avatar, right? You're thinking about who are the people you want to work with. And so you give them a name, right? Like,
Mhm.
even like you say, like, oh, well, where do they live? Like, do they have kids? Do they not have kids?
Yep.
What are some of their hobbies? Where do they shop? Like, what kind of music are they listening to? And like all of these things feel trivial until you start to kind of dial it back and realize that all of them kind of tell you a little bit of something
Mhm.
about them, right? It gives you a
Yep.
little insight onto maybe where they are um, online, what kind of content will resonate with them most,
Mhm.
and so usually I'll start there. In some for some businesses in general, LinkedIn is the place to be, right?
Mm.
And then in some cases, like I said, Instagram seems to be universal. In fact, I actually just saw somebody post on Instagram the other day about how like when did Instagram become like the new business card? And I was like, girl, Instagram
Yeah.
been the new business card. Like,
2012.
let's set up a call. Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, seriously.
It's true. Like, I mean,
Yep.
I just came back from a conference in Vegas, and the same thing. Like, it's no longer like, "Hey, do you have a card?" It's like, "Hey, are you on Instagram?"
Mhm.
And if you're not, then it's maybe like, "Hey, are you on LinkedIn?" But you have to figure out by knowing, like, who you're speaking to first, right? You have to kind of, like, imagine who they are, how they like to consume their content. If they like, maybe they're like, like Lori, and they don't like Instagram. So then you're like, "All right,
Mhm.
this is somebody who absolutely would never be scrolling on Instagram." Well, then where might they consume content? Because everybody is consuming content every single day.
Yep.
Are they more professional minded? Then maybe they'll be on LinkedIn, right? Are they on YouTube? I mean, YouTube is another one that I think a lot of people overlook as a
Mhm.
social platform, but it's like a really powerful platform for the right audience, especially now with YouTube Shorts. So
And who would that I guess if you could just name a few characteristics of the sort of avatar that might be looking on YouTube, what might that person
I
look
think that,
like?
that I think that person is probably, I would say ages like 25 to 54. I think that those people are, people who like to learn, right? They're visual learners, right? They like to like watch tutorials, right? They like people telling them, tips and tricks on how to like, yep, I think that longer form content too.
Mm.
Like some people
Mhm.
really love to, like, binge. People who love Netflix would love YouTube, right? So if your audience avatar loves a good loves a good Netflix binge, they would absolutely eat up YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And yes, they have that shorts component to it, which is great to pull them in, but the average YouTube viewer, they are the people who like long form content.
Mhm. So if someone is just starting out, I have specific ways that I have them go about creating their first avatar because if they're like, I don't even know where to start." I would say most of the people that I work with, again, because they start their business because they love the practice of it, the art of it, or whatever it is that they're offering, I say start with yourself and use yourself as your first avatar and then sort of round it out from there. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, everybody likes to work with people who are like-minded, right? So starting with yourself is a great place to start. And then, like I said, think about your best friend or your best client and start dialing back from there. Kind of going deeper with
Yeah.
your avatars that way. I wouldn't go crazy with the avatars either, right? You want
Yeah.
like 3. Don't go like
Yeah.
crazy because
Yep.
then it's like, you can't serve everybody. So,
Right. Exactly. Which is then you're getting into your, hourly workout
exactly.
and you'll be very, very sore and miserable and you'll never go back.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, no, it's true. Like, it is very much like you said, like with the gym, if you go too hard too quick, like you're like, forget it. This is not gonna work.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do it again. And the same thing is true for social media because if you go too hard too quick, you're gonna feel defeated.
Mhm.
Especially if you're getting caught up in those analytics. Like stay away from the analytics for like a while. Just please. Like if you're just jumping on, do not even look at the analytics.
Which is very, very comforting because I am, like, so not an analytics person. I probably need to be a little bit more so, but, eh yeah, I think you have to understand, like, what are you trying to get from this? And diving into the analytics may not maybe just be more of a distraction than anything else.
Yeah, because 'cause you'll be trying to change things constantly or getting in your head. You won't love it. You'll love it or you'll love it even less.
Mhm.
And, you don't wanna get into this habit of changing your strategy or getting in your head, because based on analytics that just don't have a lot of data. You need the data before you can look at the analytics, and, like, a month or 2 months is just not enough.
Yeah.
So you need to really play around with it and see, like, what actually works and what doesn't.
Yeah. So speaking of content, do you have any, like, very black and white do's and don'ts of the type of content you should or should not be including, especially if you are your brand. It's very personal and you say, you wanna tell your story and be authentic. I know I don't particularly like that word either, but it is what it is.
I know. Yeah.
Is there anything that you recommend people stay away from?
I think that a big turnoff is, like, too Canva heavy, like,
Mm,
too much of a Canva heavy grid, right? Like, it's great to have some of that branding sprinkled in, but when it's just, like, Canva template after Canva template, it's too much and you're not being personal, right? People want to see you. They wanna connect
mhm,
with you, your face, your voice, right? People connect with faces. So I think that the more, you can show your face, either in your pictures, or on video, that's number 1 versus the Canva templates. Like, I would use, like, maybe 20% Canva templates, if
boy.
that
Oh, boy, I better go back and revise my entire Instagram.
again, don't get in your head about it,
No, totally.
there's there's definitely a place and time for a great powerful carousel, right? People save that. I'm not saying that that's not important, but I definitely would not want your whole grid to be that, right? Because then people are like, "Well, who is she?" Right?
Right.
I think the other thing is too, is to, like, don't be afraid of being vulnerable, right? I think sometimes people try to be too professional, right? And they're not showing their human side. And people
Mhm.
wanna know, like, are you married? Do you have kids? Like, where do you live? What do you do on the weekends? Like, they wanna know all those little things. And if you're not showing it in the grid is fine, but maybe show up in stories and give them a little,
Yeah.
little insight there. So definitely that's a do, is to be personable and a little vulnerable. And another don't I would say is, like, Stop. I know we're on here to market our business, but, like, think of it as relationships first, which again seems
Mhm.
so cliche, but it's so true.
Mhm.
It's people first over selling, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen people show up and they just wanna promote their course, right? Or their membership or whatever product they're selling, you know? People
Yeah.
know when you're selling to them, and they automatically turn off. And, like, I
Yeah.
love to tell my clients, you know, people love to buy, but they don't like to be sold to, right?
Mhm.
So they will buy if they, like your message and they like your expertise and they like you, but you don't
Yeah.
have to sell so hard.
Yeah.
So I think, trying to tone it down when you're making your content. Everything I know we talk about like call to action a lot when we talk
Mhm.
about marketing. But I would challenge that like every post does not need to have a call to action,
Mm.
right? Like if they are interested in you, they're gonna binge more of your content. They may come across that post that it was relevant to have a call to action, and again, going back to that profile, right? They're gonna wanna know more about you, right? So they're gonna go on your profile and they're gonna click over to your website. So, like, try to take the panic and the worry out of like, "Oh, no, but I gotta get this lead," right? It's you
Yeah.
just gotta connect with the person. So,
Yeah.
I think that that's probably another thing, yeah.
That's great, and that's where just, like, the consistency and the idea of it being a long game, even though you're right, none of us wanna hear because we just wanna be successful right away, we wanna be Kardashians right away, but even at some point, they weren't,
Right,
multi-million dollar multi-million follower. I don't even know how many followers they have, but, they had to get there somehow.
right?
Yes.
And the
I wrote
Kardashians are a great example. I have a friend who also does personal branding, and one of the examples she gave that, like, I now use all the time is the Kardashians, right? Like, Kylie Jenner. When you think about Kylie Jenner, she has her lip kits and all her cosmetics, but if you look at the profile of Kylie Jenner and you look at the profile of her, cosmetics lines, her Kylie Cosmetics, the 2 followings are very different, right? Like, she
Mm,
definitely has a lot more followers on her personal. Why? Because that's where they see the real Kylie. That's where they're convinced to buy the cosmetics, not on the cosmetics, Instagram, where there's not so much Kylie unless she's, like, in an ad or, like,
yeah,
a promo,
yeah,
So I think that that's something to keep in mind, that's a great example of why a personal brand is so important, even if you're Kylie Jenner, you know?
yeah. Oh, I think that's true. I have found that I really hesitate to post those vulnerable stories, because I feel like, ugh, people don't people don't need to hear that, or they only wanna see this, like, professional version of me, and yet, when I do post things that are more personal and a little bit more real and raw, I get a ton more engagement, so it totally validates the point, and there's still this hump to get over of, being comfortable doing that.
Oh, yeah, for sure, it's scary, but you know what they say, like, if it's not scaring you, then you're not really moving the needle, right? So you have to that's how you grow.
No, I like safe. I'd like to be safe all the time. Yeah, right. Um, can you talk about any, client that you've worked with where you've seen, like, a shift in their social media, engagement based on some of the things you've talked about, like being more vulnerable or just, like, how that's played out in someone you've worked with?
Yeah, so one example that I always love to talk about is I had this client who she was a real estate agent, and and I find this like particularly true for real estate agents, right? They always want to be, very professional. They want to show up like, they hold back a lot sometimes, and this was the case with this client where she wanted to showcase her listings and her expertise, but she was holding back on the personal. And when we kind of, went into the deep dive, we did a brand audit, we restarted her social media strategy. What we learned was that she had this like great like dog community that she not only was part of, she founded it. And it was the
Mm,
biggest one in her city. And I said to her, "Well, why aren't you posting about that?" And she said, "Well, nobody wants to hear about dogs." I was like, "Of course they do." Like,
everyone wants to hear
dog
about dogs.
yeah, like, the dog lovers, those are your people. Those are the
Yep.
people who wanna buy houses from you because you're gonna know where the best dog parks are, right? And
Yep.
all of that. So and they feel a connection to you because you love dogs as much as they do. And
Mhm.
so she had at the time a page for the group. But we started doing a lot of cross promotions between those two pages. And we also, kind of leaned into showcasing her dog more, in her content. And we definitely saw, like, a huge increase in her engagement, but
Hmm.
more so, that was the most exciting part was, like, she would post them like she had an open house, and all of a sudden
Mhm.
people would be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna be in the neighborhood, like, I'm gonna try and stop by." Like,
Huh.
they weren't necessarily buying a house necessarily,
Yeah.
but now they're engaging with her, whereas before they weren't, but now
Mhm.
she's, the dog lover like they are, right? They've
Yeah.
connected on that human level, and I
Yeah.
think, for her, it was a stretch to try and work a dog into, like, luxury real estate. That felt, ooh, weird,
Mhm.
but it humanized her, and it really helped
Mhm.
her connect and find her people.
I think it's a great example of going back to something we talked about earlier of like we I think we maybe not all, but a lot of us feel like it has to be this, super polished, curated, professional representation. Whereas, like, how are you going to stand out in a crowd of other professional, curated, polished presenters by being human and like showing your unique characteristics?
Yeah, and, like, as we see, like, society shifting and all of this, nobody wants that. Nobody trusts perfectly curated content or curated
Hmm.
content creators. I mean, the news is, like, a great example of that, right? Like, we're seeing a lot of, like, rising stars that are independent journalists, that are proving that they're credible and they're doing their homework just as much, but they don't have, like, all of the production team behind them and, like, the
Yeah.
so a lot of people are choosing to get their news that way, which, we can argue good or bad, but, like, some of them are legitimate, like, they're really doing their homework, and a lot
Yeah.
of them are a lot more unbiased than, some of the other outlets, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
at least that's how some people are seeing it, is my point. That's how people are
Yeah.
views are shifting, and so we can go from, like, a big, news network where everything's super polished and everybody's super professional, but a lot of people are trusting that independent journalist, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on businesses, both, people who are their own brand and bigger, larger organizations using social media as a political platform or expressing, I guess, support for some sort of a political stance or
Yeah.
cause?
Yeah, I mean, and it is a question I think on everybody's mind. It feels like we're always kind of walking that line. And I think it's definitely a preference. Like, it's definitely a
Mhm.
choice, right? If you're ready to kind of go all in, how strongly you believe in the people you want to work with, right? Because there are 2 sides, right? Like, one side is like, "I just don't wanna get into it, like, I just your politics, and I don't wanna," like, and that's totally fine and understandable, like, when you're,
Yeah.
I don't think that makes you fake, you know what I mean? I think that that is totally understandable if you don't wanna get political on your platforms.
Mhm.
But then there's other people who really feel strongly about it, and the argument could be made that, like, wherever you lie of a topic or politics, people are going to connect with you on that, right? You're going to alienate for sure. For sure, you're
Yep.
gonna alienate the other side. But that if you don't wanna work with people like that, with those particular beliefs or whatever it is, if you feel strongly about that, well, then some people just don't care, right? Like, some
Yeah.
people are like, "Well, I wanna alienate those people because I just want my people." It's a choice. It's definitely a
Mhm.
choice. It's not for everybody, but I guess that's for somebody to really think about,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's not bad if you know what you're going into, right? Like, if you
Mhm.
know you're gonna talk politics or take a stance one way or the other, and it's a really conscious choice on who you wanna work
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to alienate anybody, then I would just, say top of
Yeah.
mind and not get into it.
I would agree with you, and my take on it, my stance has always been I'm going to keep business as neutral in that capacity, as possible. And then back when I had my gym, and this was in 2020, and obviously it was COVID, and I had a CrossFit gym, and the owner of CrossFit at the time made some very, very offensive remarks that really pissed off a lot of people, and as a result, many people, de-affiliated their CrossFit gyms, and
Mhm.
I was getting, like, bombarded with texts and emails from some of my gym members saying, "What are you gonna do? And if you don't say anything, then that tells us one thing over the other," and it was, like, a really tricky position to be in, and so ultimately, I chose to de-affiliate. It felt like the right thing to do. I didn't agree with the remarks he made, but that was like that very much put me in a really uncomfortable position, but I felt like I had no choice but to do something.
Yeah, and I mean, again, to any entrepreneur that feels that way, if anything feels like it's going against your morals and you feel that strongly about it and you're hearing from your audience, again, it goes back to that, listening to your audience, right? Not to say that they should dictate, everything you put out there or how you run your business, but it's definitely good insight, right? Into how the people that you value their business, these are people that you want to work with, right? These are your
Yeah.
clients. Like listening to their voices and then taking measured action is important.
Yeah. Yeah. But tricky.
But tricky, yeah, for sure,
But tricky.
especially now. Yeah.
Is there anything that you find yourself deep diving into or going down a rabbit hole in terms of social media? Like, is there a topic or anything that you just like are consuming a lot of content?
Good tip that I would give to anybody, who's building, their social media right now is you wanna build in public, you want to take your viewer and your audience along with you,
Mhm.
the good and the bad, because that
Yeah.
humanizes you.
Yeah. Gosh. Those are all my questions about social media. Do you feel like we covered everything?
I mean, social media in itself is a rabbit hole that we can go on and on about.
Yeah, we could.
Um, I think, for going back to your "Hey, coach" question, that's
Yeah.
just the basics, and I think
Mm,
I would just encourage anybody who listens to this episode, to just take away the basics. Start with the little things, right? Maybe you're just, okay with doing like photo posts or carousels. That's fine if you're not right away, comfortable on video. I definitely think it's videos that's super important. I don't think that's something you can put off too long, but like baby steps, right? I think it's important to just take baby steps towards social media. And then, yeah, we could talk for hours if we wanted to get into analytics. I am a data nerd and I've been in this online space for like I call myself like a dinosaur because the beginning of Twitter is when I kind of entered the game.
yeah.
And, kind of like my YouTube rabbit hole, I love seeing the evolution of it all, like what's trending and then all of a sudden what's not trending. And it drives some people crazy, but people like me eat it up.
We'll have to have you back on for an analytics specific episode.
Yeah, part two. But start with this
Part
one.
2.
Part
That's right.
one,
Okay,
just
we'll start with
baby
this one.
steps.
Baby steps. And that touches on one other question I was gonna ask, which is, for someone who is not comfortable being in front of the camera, um, those baby steps can be carousels or pictures or stills maybe of something that represents their business. It doesn't have to be their face.
Yeah, and getting comfortable in stories, I think, is a lot easier too, right? Because that
Mhm.
feels kind of on the fly and it doesn't last, it goes away after 24 hours. So that's a good place to start getting comfortable on video also.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been extremely insightful. And I would love to know how people can work with you.
Yeah, people can follow me on Instagram, right? It's Corine Ingrassia _ at the end because they didn't have my whole name. Or they
Such a
can
common
follow
name.
I know, it's so weird. But that they can follow me on Instagram for sure, or because again, calling card, or they can visit my website, which is corinnegrassia.com. And, I help my clients in a variety of different ways. I do content marketing, and that looks different for everybody. Like we were saying today, it could be social media, and social media even has like which platform are you on? And I help my clients determine that. Like, what's the best way to use content to market your business? Maybe it is social media, maybe you're leaning into email marketing, maybe you're using your podcast, maybe you're, creating a podcast to help share your expertise. There's a lot of different ways, and it's just together we kind of go through their branding, their messaging, and determining where they should be, how they're showing up, and how to, put their message forward to reach the audience they're looking to reach.
Yeah. And speaking of podcasts, how if someone wants to launch their very own podcast, I mean, I may be talking about myself here. How can they work with you?
Yeah, so I offer coaching services for podcasts where we will, take you step by step in coming up with your idea, right? Coming up with that audience avatar, getting clear there. We do a little bit of branding work, depending. Some people need help with that. Some people are really clear on that. And then we go through just, the episodes and lining all that up. And then we even touch on a little bit of the tech. I'm kind of like, your coach in your pocket as you're building, and we get that launch up and running.
Great. Well, so we start our episodes with our Hey Coach segment, and I end each of the episodes where I have a guest by asking a question. So on the podcast, we basically talk about how entrepreneurship is a workout. So, what is one business strength or habit that you wish you had developed earlier in your career?
I wish that earlier in my career, that I wasn't such a perfectionist and was better at delegating. Because I think for a long time that held me back. You know, I had a specific vision and I knew what I wanted it to look like. And so it was really hard finding people who were basically just a duplicate of me. Like that just doesn't, it's not realistic. So it took a minute to learn that. So I think that that's one thing I wish had known a lot earlier.
Yeah, that's a great one. I plan to have a future episode on the mindset of perfectionism. So
Yeah,
lots to talk about there.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I think that does it. I
All
don't
right.
know.
Well, thank you for having me on. This has been
Yes, thank
great.
you for being here. This was awesome and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.